Hi, I'm Matthew Mandel, and I'm an RTM representative from District 1, and I'd like to bring your attention to an issue involving this house behind me. There's a demolition permit on it. Built in 1900, it's one of the last examples of single-family homes along the Post Road in this area, and its nickname is actually the Lone Sentinel. In 2011, the Terrain Store, a subsidiary of Urban Outfitters, leased this property to create a retail store. And in initial negotiations, it was agreed that the house was going to be preserved. And with that, they became good corporate citizens of the town of Westport. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved their application in October of 2011 of that year, allowing for 48 parking spaces to be held in reserve. Essentially, great latitude in allowing for parking spaces to be shown on a plan but not actually built. And at a later date, if there was a need for parking, they would activate them. 6 months later, the Terrain Store comes back to Planning and Zoning and wants to build a nursery area and greenhouse area on top of the reserve parking. And they want to modify the reserve parking. Planning and Zoning again gives them latitude in saying that reserve parking is supposed to be on top of green grass, but since the plants and whatnot are landscaping, they would allow it, giving Terrain another benefit. So all is well and good, but now it's 2013, and parking has become an issue. People are using their restaurant, in addition to coming for their retail stuff. The neighbors are upset because people are parking on the street, even on their lawns, and they've asked P&Z to do something. So P&Z has asked Terrain to activate the reserve parking area. The rub here is that Terrain has said no. They don't want to do that because they like their retail area, the nursery area, and their greenhouse, and don't want to give it up. Instead, they want to knock down the house. That will give them 8 extra spots and a little bit of mathematical help in terms of the requirement for parking. That's a problem. No historic house should be knocked down for parking.
One of the reasons we think this house is so important to retain is that it represents the character of the Post Road from, say, 100 years ago. And now that so much of it has become Westport's version of a strip, we think that the few remaining examples of the character of the Post Road should be retained wherever possible. We consider this to be a great example of that. We were encouraged that Terrain was willing to develop a plan that would save the house, work with us very collaboratively, and so we fully supported Terrain in their undertaking to develop this property with the house. And it was my understanding that they had arranged a plan, developed a plan that was able to incorporate all their reserve parking requirements while still retaining the house. So we're disappointed now to understand that a current plan envisions having to remove the house.
The current proposal from the folks at Terrain is to demolish the house, the little gray house at the corner of Crescent Road and Post Road East, so that they can facilitate the full construction of 107 parking spaces, which would be the requirement for the site. There was a prior approval approved in April of 2012 that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved that showed all of the future reserve parking was on the east side of the property next to the Fresh Market.
Okay, and prior to that, was there another approval?
Yeah, the 2011 plan had parking approved going also on the Fresh Market side near Crescent Road. The current proposal, because they were asked by the Planning and Zoning Commission to activate some of their future reserve parking, there's 26 spaces on the Fresh Market side that they'd like to activate, which will reduce some of the outdoor garden area, and then there's another probably about 8 or 9 spaces where the gray house is that they're going to activate. Based on what they approved, it would seem that they certainly were accommodating to the applicant by allowing them to have the future reserve parking. During the original hearing, when Terrain came before the Planning and Zoning Commission, they made representations that they would try to save the house and that they would, and then ultimately through the approval process, they did save the house, because in both the 2011 site plan and the 2012 site plan, they showed retention of the house as a retail building. So it would be inferred that they certainly intended to retain that house.
We believe that they did come to an understanding. We came to an understanding where Terrain was going to make every effort to save this house, and our support for their undertaking was completely dependent on that.
Terrain needs to live up to its responsibilities. There are resolutions stating that the parking needs to be on the other side. This is a historic house and needs to be saved. I believe that once people understand what they're proposing, that they're going to rip down this house to create more parking, that people will stop shopping here, and maybe that's exactly what they should do.
So now you have an idea of the issue. This house is in jeopardy because of the small amount of parking that's needed. So we have to find an answer to this situation. Either Terrain is going to live up to their obligation in the 2 resolutions that were approved by Planning and Zoning to activate their reserve parking, or P&Z is going to find a middle ground to allow them to activate some of it, but not cost the house its life, essentially. So how can you help? First of all, you should email the Planning and Zoning Commission at lbradley@westportct.gov. He's the Director of Planning and Zoning, and he'll distribute it to all the commissioners. You should also come out to all the hearings. Speak up and tell them how you think historic preservation is important, and specifically this house, that it should not be dropped because of a need for some parking spaces. No historic house should be lost because we need to park our cars. Please, write the Planning and Zoning Commission, come to the hearings, and let's preserve this house. It's important for you, it's important for all of Westport. Thank you very much for your time.